please listen to me carefully because there's just a little difference in between these two words, cue and clue. Okay, so what is a cue and what is a clue? A cue is basically a signal for you to perform something, okay, to do something. When you get a signal, and after that, when you do something, after you have received the signal, that is a cue, okay. And a clue is kind of a hint, okay. When you are when you are trying to solve any kind of mystery, and when you get any hint that will lead you to solve that mystery, that is known as a clue. A clue is any kind of hint, okay. A clue is any kind of hint that you get to solve any kind of mystery, or to uh, or it will lead you to an unknown answer. All right, that is a clue, a hint, and you have to search for that. Okay, you have to search for that particular clue. If you want to solve a if you want to solve a mystery, you have to search for some kind of clues, that means some kind of hints, isn't it, which will lead you to solve that mystery. So that's a clue. Whereas a cue is any kind of signal, okay, any kind of signal, and after you receive that signal, you do something. After you receive that signal, you do something, okay. Suppose you are in the class and I am there uh, you know, uh, explaining to you all some topic, and one of you just stand up and ask me something, and I just show you my hand. I show you my hand, which portrays, stop for some time. I just show you my hand, and I want to express that stop for some time. Okay, so that's a cue, because I have, and after that you stopped. Okay, after that you stop. You are in the class, I'm also there in the class, I'm explaining to you something, and you stand up and ask me a question. Because I am explaining something, so what I do is I just show you my hand and ask you to stop. I do not say anything, but I just show you my hand, and that which means to stop. That's a cue. And you stop. After that, you just sit down. You stop. That's a cue. After you have received the signal, you sit down. That means after you receive the signal, you do something. Okay? And that's a cue. All right. If you are driving, okay, if you are driving and the light, it turns red, what does it mean? You have to stop, and you stop, isn't it? That's a cue. After you receive a cue, you do something. That means there's an action after you receive a cue, any kind of cue, any kind of signal. All right. After that, you perform something, you do something. Whereas clue is something for which you have to, you have to search for the clues. You have to search for the clues so that you can You can get some unknown answers, or you can solve some mysteries. So that is the basic difference between a cue and a clue. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, the spelling of Q is CUE, right?
Yeah, it's CUE. So just remember that cue is a signal, and after that you have to do something. After you receive the signal, you have to do something. Clue is a hint. Okay, clue is any kind of hint that will help you to solve any kind of mystery, or that will help you to uh, get any kind of unknown answers, and you have to basically search for the clues. So our topic is recognizing cues and clues. So when you communicate with someone, okay, when you communicate with someone, you must try to understand the cues and clues. That means you must try to understand the signals as well as the hints. All right. How will you be able to do that? Okay. So, how will you be able to recognize or notice different cues and clues? So, the cues and the clues, they can be direct, okay, and they can be indirect as well, okay. You can mm, receive direct cues as well as indirect cues. First of all, I would just like to talk about cues, okay? So, cues can be non-verbal, it can be verbal as well. Any kind of signal that will let you do something, okay? After you receive the signal, as I had said, after you receive the signal, you do something, isn't it? You do an activity. There's an action after that particular signal, okay? So it can be verbal, it can be non-verbal as well, okay? So, and at the same time, it can be direct and it can be indirect as well. When somebody says you something directly, when somebody says you something directly, that is a verbal cue. That is a direct verbal cue. Suppose go in the classroom. Suppose your teacher says, go inside the classroom and sit. That's a signal. After you have received the signal, after you have received that verbal cue, and it's a direct verbal cue, after you have received the direct verbal cue, what you have to do? You have to go in and you have to sit. You have to perform an action, isn't it? So that's a direct verbal cue. Then, as I had already said, as I had said that there are indirect verbal cues as well. Uh, Indirect verbal cues will basically be related to some actions, and you have to, some actions or sentences that is said to you indirectly. There you might not be able to like easily understand it, but you should try to, but you should try to understand it. Okay, these are basically the prompts, the cues. The indirect verbal cues are basically the prompts that are less obvious about what is expected and what is expected. All right. Mm, so for the direct verbal cues, it's quite easier to understand the direct verbal cues. Why? Because you are instructed, you are given an instruction, you get it, and after that uh, you can directly do the task. After that, you can do, you can do it, isn't it? But regarding indirect verbal cues, uh, it's totally, dependent on the listener, how the listener understands it. Okay, if you do not listen to the speaker properly, the one who has given that indirect verbal cue, if you have not listened to that particular person properly, if you were thinking about something else, or you had filtered the speech, the lecture that the other person has given you, then you will not be able to understand. So it's totally dependent upon the listener. Okay, it's totally dependent upon the listener, because it's a little bit critical to understand. But if the listener listens to the other person properly, then definitely the listener will be able to respond based on that particular prompt. Okay, based on that particular indirect non-verbal cue. Okay, so the indirect non-verbal cues may come as a question. For example, suppose I ask you, what are you supposed to do now? I am explaining you a topic, and I ask you, what are you supposed to do now? I'm not telling you, I'm not directly signaling you, I'm not directly telling you to do something. I'm asking you a question. What are you supposed to do now? Okay, so you have to understand it. This is an indirect non-verbal cue. You are in the class. What are you supposed to do? You are supposed to listen to the teacher, isn't it? You're supposed to listen to the what you are supposed to listen to the teacher. You're supposed to ask the teacher regarding something that you have not understood. Okay, so this is a indirect non-verbal. This is an indirect verbal cue. So indirect verbal cues generally they come as a question. They come as a question, and you have to realize it yourself that yes, the other person has asked me this thing, so that means he wants to know that whether I am aware of that particular thing or not. Okay, so in that way you have to understand it, and you have to do your task accordingly. Okay, so this is about verbal cues. Okay, you can also receive different types of non-verbal cues. The other person will not express using words, Rather than that, the other person will use some kind of non-verbal actions. Okay, or not only person, as I had said that if you see the red light, if you are driving and if you see the red light, that means you have to stop, isn't it? So that is a cue. Nobody has said you anything, nobody has exchanged any word, okay, nobody has instructed you, but you have to do something after you have received that cue. Okay, so verbal cues are when you receive verbal cues. You can receive verbal cues, you can receive non-verbal cues as well, but it totally depends upon you how you understand it. So you must be you must concentrate, okay? You must pay attention whenever you're having, especially whenever you're having any kind of conversation with someone, especially at your workplace. So you have to take care of the actions. You have to take care, you have to be aware of the actions of the other person. You have to be aware of the body language, of the facial expressions of the other person. Then only you will be able to understand the cue, isn't it? If the other person is if the other person is giving you some kind of signal and it's non-verbal, okay, if you do not pay attention, then you'll not be able to understand. If you pay attention, then only you'll be able to understand, and then only you can act accordingly. Otherwise you will not be able to do so. Whenever you're having a conversation, you must pay attention so that you can understand the cues, verbal as well as non-verbal. All right, is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so as you all have understood, then I shall proceed now. Now, as I had already said, that clue is any kind of hint that you receive to and to after you receive, after you get that hint, you can proceed. Okay, when you are doing something and you are stuck somewhere, okay, you are stuck in between and you need some help, you need some clue, you need some hint in order to proceed. Okay, what are you supposed to do? Suppose you go to your supervisor, you go to your senior, okay, you go to your senior and you ask him that this is the situation and I'm not being able to solve this particular situation. What will I do? What am I supposed to do now? The supervisor or the senior, he or she will say you something, isn't it? He or she may directly provide you the solution that you do this thing, and then you will be able to solve this particular situation. And if not, the person might give you some kind of clues. Okay, the other person, the supervisor or the senior, uh, might not might not like provide you the solution, but might provide some hint. Okay, and after you receive that hint, you have to use that particular clue in order to resolve the particular situation. So whenever we communicate with someone, the first thing that we should do is we must pay attention. We must concentrate. We should not think about, some other thing, or we should not ignore what the other person is saying. We should be aware of what he or she is trying to say. Along with that, we should also be aware of the non-verbal, like the gestures, the facial expressions, the body language, because as you all know, non-verbal communication plays a very important role in the process of communication, especially in case of oral communication. Non-verbal communication plays a very important role when you communicate with someone. In order to understand the cues and the clues, you will have to notice the facial expressions, the body language, the gestures, and also pay attention to the words. Okay, you have to do everything at the same time. It's not that I will listen to him now. I will just ignore his expressions or body language or gestures. I will just ignore that. No, in that way you will not be able to understand the whole message. Okay, so if you are an active listener, if you are someone who pays attention to the speaker, then you will definitely be able to recognize or understand the cues and the clues, the signals and the hints, and accordingly you will be able to carry on with your tasks. Okay, and it's very necessary it's very necessary in communication. It's a very important part of communication, and especially in case of formal communication, especially when you are communicating with people at your workplace, and especially when you are communicating with someone who is related to you, who is a client, or with whom you share a professional relationship. When you talk about work, when you talk about business, you must listen to the other person carefully, so that you can understand the words along, and at the same time, so that you can understand the other things apart from the words. Okay, sometimes words are also very difficult to understand. Okay, sometimes words are also kind of difficult to understand. So if you do not pay attention, you will not be able to recognize any kind of signal and any kind of hint. But once you listen, once you are aware of the environment, once you are aware, once you concentrate, and once you pay attention, you will definitely be able to recognize the cues and the clues. Okay, so there's no basic, like you have to be a good listener in order to recognize the cues and clues. You have to be a good observer. You have to be someone who is aware. You have to be also aware. Okay, so in this way, when you listen to the other person properly, when you communicate properly, when you communicate effectively, then when you when you are aware of the things that are happening around you, and apart from that, when you observe things closely, then you will definitely be able to understand the cues and the clues. Now it might sound very difficult. Okay, now when I'm explaining to you all this, how to recognize cues and clues, it might sound very difficult, but it's something that we all have been doing since ages. Okay, it's something that we all do on a regular basis. Okay, so because now I'm explaining the topic, and that is why it might seem very like complicated, but otherwise we have been doing this since ages. Whenever we communicate with someone, whenever we have a conversation with someone, there are certain things that you need to understand. There are certain signals, there are certain hints that you need to understand. Okay, and after that, that particular signal or that particular clue help you to do a particular task. So it's very simple. It's very simple. And let me know if you have any doubts regarding Chew and Clue. Some of you have, joined very lately. Do you want to ask me anything? The ones who have joined very lately.
Ma'am, like I have one question.
Hmm.
So normally, like, ma'am, when we have a conversation with someone, then normally our attention span is very less. That we don't have that much of observation or that listening capability or whatever you have said, like paying attention.
Hmm.
So, how do we generate that interest or that attention, that ability to improve our concentration?
So basically, see, we are human beings. So at the end of the day, we are all human beings. We are not perfect. So sometimes, of course, this the situation that you had explained, that you had, said me, that of course happens, and of course we lost interest and we lose interest, and we don't feel like listening when somebody is, especially when somebody is giving a long lecture or delivering a speech for a longer duration, for a very long period. So we generally don't feel like listening to each and every word. Okay, but you have to be able to figure out, actually that's very natural. When you lost interest, that's very natural to like sometimes not be there mentally in that place, although you are there in that particular place physically, you're present physically, but mentally you are somewhere else. But when you have to figure out which is important to you and which is not. Sometimes few things are not at all important to you. Okay, so then it's okay to like filter and listen. But sometimes when you know know that this particular thing is very important, then you have to like motivate yourself to listen to the other person, to observe the things around you when it is necessary, when it is important. On a regular basis, on a day to day basis, what do? We come across a lot of things, we listen to a lot of things, we come across a lot of things, we see a lot of things. We don't observe each and everything, we don't remember each and everything, because most of the things are not at all important, most of the things are unimportant to us. But when you know that this particular thing is important, then you definitely have to motivate yourself, you have to generate that interest yourself. Nobody else can do that. Of course, if the speaker you know is delivering an interesting speech, then definitely you will be interested to listen to that speaker. But if not, then definitely you will keep on filtering the speech. You'll listen to one part, will not listen to the other. So this is a human nature, this is something that is very natural. But when you know that yes, this particular thing is important, I have to grab all the information, I have to listen to whatever the other person is saying. When you know it is important, then you have to do it. You do not have any other option rather than pushing yourself to do it. You have to push yourself to do it. You have to keep on reminding yourself that this is important to you. This is, if you miss any kind of information, then you will not be able to complete the given task. So that is why you will have to push yourself to listen, to observe. Okay, otherwise it's very natural to like ignore a lot of things. and to filter the speech. Okay, otherwise it's very natural. Is it clear, Julius? You have to
Yes, ma'am,
push
I
yourself
understood your point.
whenever basically you
Mhm.
find that you feel that you know that this particular thing is important to you, then you have to push yourself to observe and listen. Okay, you don't have any other option rather than doing that. When you feel that this is not at all important, then it's fine. Automatically you will be, like, you will filter the speech, you will filter and listen. But when you know it is important, then you have to push yourself to listen. You have to keep on reminding yourself that this is important. If I miss any kind of information, then I will not be able to complete the task properly. Okay, so you have to keep on reminding yourself. Any other question?
No, ma'am, no more questions.
Okay, then. So that's all for today. I will share the notes. Okay, so go through the notes and let me know if you have any doubts in the next class. Okay, so I'll end the class. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye bye. Take care.
Thank you, ma'am.